Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Sharpest College Football Podcast by LeanTossup Sports. We are here to look ahead to Week 3. This is BuckMetrics, joined as always by Robert Martin. Robert, are you ready to look ahead to Week 3 and look at some of the BuckMetrics metrics?
Yeah, I'm excited for that. I think it's gonna be interesting to see where some of the quarterbacks came in last week, and then also kind of looking at the spreads for this coming week up ahead. Um, the basically the model is getting sharper on a lot of these spreads. Some of the outliers from last week have come in a lot, so I'm excited. And again, this always happens, right? With only 2 weeks of data, basically 2 weeks of data before, it was a lot harder. Now with full 3 weeks of data for some of these teams, like for 2-3 weeks of data for some of these teams, now the mall's getting a lot better, and I think we're going to start seeing a lot better value in a lot of these lines. So
I agree. And I've got some crow to eat when we get to a certain list here, but the first one's kind of easy. The top Apex quarterbacks. Nothing really earth breaking here. Number 4 here, the Colandrea kid from Virginia. We talked about him in part 1, just come out of nowhere to be number 4, and again against a very good GMU defense. Number 5, Brady Cook. I really, really enjoy this because you might remember my whole thesis about Boise State was their offensive coordinator was a crappy quarterback coach at Missouri. And look what happens. He's already kind of ruined the Boise offense. We'll see. But the early returns are very not promising. And look at this. Brady Cook in one game without Bush Hamden as his quarterback coach. 200 Apex. Well done. I love that. Tyler Van Dyke. This surprises the BuckMetrics of 2 months ago. When we did the ACC preview, our buddy Josh said, hey, look out. Tyler Van Dyke is a great fit for this offense. It looks like he was absolutely right so far. Dante Moore, unbelievable start to his college career. Already in the top 8 in Apex. Coastal is not a really good offense, but San Diego State, even on their bad team, bad day is going to be a pretty good defense. Shedeur Sanders, by now, we're used to that. And J.J. McCarthy, he was in the top 10 last season. What catches your eye here?
yeah, I think Brady Cook and Colin Drea are obviously kind of eye catching there. Caleb Williams and even Sam Hartman number 2. I think a lot of people expected Sam Hartman to be good, but not like Sam Hartman for me was always like, oh, he's one of the top quarterbacks, but not like the top quarterback, like a top 10, top 15 quarterback. But there's always ones better than him. But I mean, okay, excluding Caleb Williams, because I think you can he's kind of a class of his own, especially some of those ridiculous plays there. They just absolutely annihilated Stanford. Um, but like that's really like it's a huge step up for even Hartman. Now Hartman's old, so that's gonna hurt him for the NFL. But man, though, just him finally coming into it, and even Drew Aller, my model actually thinks Penn State is one of the better teams in college football too. So yeah, I think, and sorry, I shouldn't even say better. I think it's like one of the top 4 teams in college football. Like I think it's my model right now in terms of the rankings, preliminary at least. It has them right up there with Georgia as one of the top 2 teams. So, like, yeah, Drew Aller is really showing that he's got something there. So, yeah,
Yeah, you kind of wonder what would have been last season, and maybe he wouldn't have been ready. But I don't know. They probably weren't going to win the national championship anyways. But Penn State looks really tough with him there. Really, really just nice piece to drop in there. And my dogs are impressed with him too, as you can tell.
they are. Yes,
The top Ryan. This is our best receivers. This first name here, George Larvadian. I think he came in from an FCS program. He was not with them last year. Played some kind of, I don't know. Miami's defense is better this season, as is UMass's. That's interesting. That tells me that Gabbert's on top of his game and their quarterback, and he's back to full health. Weaver in Washington, Odunze, no real surprise there. Samuel Brown, I have not heard of before. That's a name to keep an eye on. Ashton Jeanty, I guess he's the one thing that's going well for Boise. The Ashlock kid we talked about last week. Interesting, this Tulane kid is on the list, even though Pratt was out for last game, which was a tough break. Evan Stewart from A&M. I actually had Muhammad as their top receiver coming in, but coming in ninth in the whole in all of FBS so far is impressive. And then look at this, number 10 North Texas. We talked about in part one that their defense could be really, really bad. This is interesting because their head coach Eric Morris was the offensive coordinator at Washington State last season, and before that, he was the head coach at Incarnate Word, one of those guys. So he might have just really flipped that switch immediately. Pretty interesting in week 2 of year 1, you've got a guy in the top 10.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing about looking at this list is what school isn't on this list, and it's Ohio State.
Yeah.
And you're looking at, Marvin Harrison Jr. and Ibuka. Those have been heavily talked about as top first round draft picks, top 10 first round draft picks. Again, the Cardinals have both the number 1 and theoretically the number 2 draft picks if you go by draft odds. So basically, the ongoing theory would be Caleb Williams 1, Marvin Harrison Jr. 2. So functionally, people are saying Marvin Pensley and Marvin Harrison Jr. as the top non-quarterback pick in the NFL draft, and he's not even in the top 10 of our top receiving yards. Now, that is not necessarily Marvin Harrison Jr.'s fault. That is the quarterback of Ohio State's fault, right? So
Yeah.
this is the balance, right? Now this metric is not adjusted for quarterback performance, which that's totally fine. That's not what it's meant to be. But the fact that the Ohio State's quarterback play is not getting someone on this list, that alone is concerning. That is a very concerning sight that there is not an Ohio State player. That means that Ohio State is underperforming expectations if they're not having one of the top
Absolutely.
receivers in the country.
They had 2 of the top 8 coming into this season, and now 0 of the top 10. That's interesting. I will go ahead and make a note to see. I'll footnote where they are if they're not in the top 10.
They're playing, yeah.
Next week.
Next week they're playing Western Kentucky this week. 28 point favorites. Very, very tempted. That spread is a bit too big for a Western Kentucky team that can score points. I'm a little tempted there.
Although Ohio State's defense does look a little better this season, but they haven't really played much in terms of opposing offenses.
No, Indiana is not particularly concerning, and then an FCS team is also not particularly concerning. So,
yeah. Okay. Top running games. Central Florida, basically. Man, I think almost all that's against Kent State. Poor Kent State, who Arkansas had problems running the ball against. USC, not a surprise. Florida State. FIU was surprising. A couple of little green shoots here being on this list. And then also that promising start by their quarterback against North Texas. Interesting. New Mexico State, not surprising. Wisconsin, sure. UCLA is an interesting team. As I noted at the bottom here, only they and USC, they're the only 2 that have top 10 GGABs, and they have top 10 quarterbacks so far. I think they've had a pretty quick transition in the post-Charbonnet DTR realm. South Florida and Liberty, 2 new coaches that it seems to be working out very well for. I really like I said last week, how Liberty lines up with the new quarterback. New coach lines up with the returning quarterback. So, anything here that you catches your eye?
I mean, Florida International has to be one of the top GGAB teams by default, if not they're one of the worst teams in the country. No, I mean, Florida State is interesting. USC, again, it just they were okay, but not as great running the ball last year. They've definitely improved on that, and that's actually really big, right? If you can now suddenly start threatening, okay, we're going to run the ball, that means you can't just drop 8 every play, right? It means you have to put defenders in the box, and that's just you put people in single coverage, and then Caleb Williams just throws them for 50-yard bombs if they get past the deep back, right? So that is a really important piece to have just a complete US and again, you have to say they're the top offense in college football. There is nothing even remotely comparable to them right now. Florida State as well, though, getting up there, potentially able to challenge them. Interestingly enough, is Army on this list or not?
No, because they run so many times. They've got a base to overcome, if that makes
Big
sense.
denominator. Yeah, yeah, okay.
Um, yeah, but to that point, Air Force was first last year, and
Hmm.
they kind of figured to always be first because they have the best running game of the three. They're not even in the top 10, and that kind of goes back to in part one my feelings about the Sam Houston defense. They shut down two very different offenses in BYU and Air Force, and BYU's got a bunch of grown men, and this
Hmm.
Air Force team, they had basically the entire squad in 2020 take a year off. So they're like chock full of extra experienced guys. And when you're in that very regimented system, it's just an incredible advantage. So to kind of, stray a little bit from your point, it's interesting that Air Force is not. And I think that one of the biggest reasons is Sam Houston.
Hmm. Yeah, and that is an important piece into there as well. But yeah, like some of these teams are a little surprising, and some of them are not. North Carolina as well, interesting rushing team. Drake May was supposed to be one of the top quarterbacks, and last week against App State, they put up I think 45 in that game. He didn't have a single passing touchdown.
28
So
in regulation, though, from what I understand.
28 points.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that game went to overtime.
It went to overtime. Yeah, but again, not a
Yeah,
single passing touchdown for Sam Howell, or not Sam Howell, Drake May.
Drake May.
Sam
Yeah.
Howell was the quarterback before him. But like this is the thing, right? He was supposed to be one of the most hyped quarterback prospects, and not seeing that so far. So very intriguing to see that this running game is kind of carrying this North Carolina team, at least right now. And it's not Drake May, because Drake May was, I
Yeah.
think, like his over under was 2.5 passing touchdowns. Didn't even get close to that. So yeah.
Drop. All right. This next one's going to be. There's a couple of victory laps here, but there's some crow I gotta eat here. The bum list. Look who's number one. The guy who I used as an example of this hurts.
It hurts.
My man needs to turn it around here. Oh, he was so good last season too. His apex was 120, and now he's at FAU and it's a -4. He has the worst so far of the guys that qualify here. Byron Brown, he'll turn it around too. I like the head coach there. The Southern Miss kid, that doesn't surprise me. I've outlined that their offense has been a mess since day one. Not going to last there. The Iowa State guy stunk, but he's new. We'll see. Jalen Maiden for San Diego State. That does not surprise me. He basically, that whole offense is a mess. Look at number 7, Cade Klubnik. Hey, how about that Clemson offense? The
Cade
Clemson
Club,
offense.
D. Clemson. Cade Klubnik needs to transfer to Oregon right now, or Oregon State right now. Get into the transfer portal right
He
now. It's gonna
does.
be okay. It's gonna be okay, buddy. Just transfer to Oregon State. You're gonna be fine.
Yes. Skip ahead to number 9. The Greek Rifle is on the bum list. This hurts me. He was so good last season against some good defenses. This is concerning because, all right, Nebraska's defense is pretty good, like we said. But then they played Eastern Michigan. Come on, guy. You're like in the bottom 10 here.
That is
And then
concerning.
lastly, number 8 and 10. Yeah, number 8 and 10 is really interesting because I don't know if you remember in the Sun Belt preview, I said I characterized the Sun Belt West as you've got two very solid teams at the top in Troy and South Alabama, and then I said after that it's wide open space. Anybody can kind of run up to number 3, and that's why I like North Texas to catch up on a lot of the open ground. Or not North Texas, Texas State, pardon me. There might be more open ground if these two quarterbacks don't pick it up. Now they were a lot better last season. Um, Texas State could really, really climb the West there.
Yeah, that's really concerning. To see Southern Alabama's quarterback, the 10th on the bum list. There, that's a very like they're a pretty good. They're good defense, but their offense just not working so far this year. So
Clearly, yeah. All right, market intelligence. So these are some lines that just kind of I'm trying to just see if there's any if I can learn anything from these lines and run this by you. Penn State giving 14.5 at Illinois. You said that your model basically has Penn State as one of the top teams in the country. I had them as the same. I actually picked them to win the East in the Big Ten preview, I think they're just a super well balanced yet a little underappreciated team. The fact that they're giving only 14 and a half at Illinois makes me think that there's kind of an appreciation here for Illinois' defense that some people might be missing. That's how I interpret that one. What do you think?
Yeah, I've got Penn State minus 28. Um, the thing is, I don't know why. Like, I mean, the thing is, there just seems to be this baked in appreciation for Illinois. They were only 3-point dogs to Kansas, and they got obliterated in the first part of the game, and they can't
That's a
came
good
back at
point.
the end to make it close. Now they did lose, by, I think by 11 or 12, but to be fair, they had to score a couple times unanswered, and I think Kansas kind of stopped caring at a certain point. Like they were up like 20, 30 points. So like I think Kansas was just kind of like, sure, fine, whatever. We'll just put in our bad defensive players. But no, like I don't know why they still love Illinois. This defense is not the same as it was last year. Luke Altmaier, again, I thought he was going to have to pass the ball. He just decided to run the ball against Kansas. He had like 2 rushing touchdowns, which was crazy. I didn't see that coming at all. Um, but yeah, it's a very weird system there with that. I don't know. Like, I'm kind of out on this Illinois team. I think this Penn State team is for real. I think there's a little bit of Penn State barely covering against West Virginia. I think there's a little bit of that in there too. But I think Penn State's just a far better team than Illinois.
Yeah, agree. Um, Maybe I liked Illinois. I didn't bet them to win their go over the season total, but this will be an interesting one to see just how much belief we should have in their defense. The next one, Arkansas only given 8 at home to BYU. I'm not to belabor the point. I think you've got number one. Arkansas struggled to run against Kent State, which is just absurd to say out loud. And going back to what we said about BYU and really that Sam Houston defense, I think that this is kind of, if we just go transitively back, I think this is kind of giving BYU credit for facing a tough defense in Sam Houston rather than saying you've got problems because they scored almost 40 points last week.
Yeah, I think I have this as a very close game, actually. I think I actually lean BYU in this game. Yeah, I actually have BYU as a 16-point favorite in this game.
Wow.
And I think it's because now it thinks Sam Houston State's a very good defense, so it's now saying, oh,
Hmm.
okay, BYU actually did okay against a really good defense. And I think Arkansas against that Kent State team, it's like, okay, that was not particularly inspiring. I think this Arkansas team might be kind of bad. They kind of declined. They were good 2 years ago. They declined a bit last year. This might be the final decline. I'm kind of taking BYU here. I think BYU could potentially win this game. I think BYU had their bad game against Sam Houston State. They figured it out last week against an FCS team. I think they could win this game.
Okay. Um, Virginia at Maryland giving 14 and a half. Virginia, I think their defense is understood to be solid. This I don't know if this is just a whole we don't believe in Virginia yet. I don't know if this is disbelief in the quarterback who ran up to number 4 on the Apex rankings. Maybe it's a fair price. This strikes me as a bit of a inflated line considering how much I just believe in the Virginia defense so much. Maybe that's my starting point. Does this one seem fair to you?
It's a bit iffy for me. I have Maryland as like massive favorites, like 43-point favorites, but that clearly seems broken somewhere because there's still a lot of bad Virginia stuff from here from last year. And also, I
Yeah, I would say
think,
that seems fair.
yeah, and I don't have like I have Anthony Colandrea. I have him doing good, but not great. I'm not sure if there was some data on him somewhere else. I don't know, but but the thing is, Maryland like was not amazing against Charlotte
Huh.
last week. I am very seriously considering putting something on Maryland there. I think they could on Virginia. I think the thing is, and again we talked about this before, where this team was like, oh, they were like emotionally beat up because of the shooting last year. Come out pretty flat against Tennessee, but Tennessee was expected to beat them anyway. They come back, almost win last week against the JMU team. I think this team is getting closer and closer to finding their footing and getting a win. I think if you have a Maryland team, again, Maryland has also been a team that's kind of randomly underperformed. They usually get the job done against bad teams. I think there've been a couple of upsets, but then they usually struggle against the better teams. I feel like they could be kind of I think they could be ripe for an upset here. So give me Virginia here. I'm
Okay.
debating Virginia. If I'm going to play something, I'll play Virginia on this one.
Fair. Navy at Memphis. Memphis giving only 14.5, I thought sounded really short because Navy, I think,
Yeah,
is just an absolute tire fire. I guess the problem is Memphis has played Arkansas State, which is horrible, and an FCS team. So maybe that's the reason why. I mean, they've literally played nothing. But I don't know if this is just showing little disbelief. Maryland or Memphis needs to kind of show it first before they're going to give more points than what you and I think. That's how I interpret that. What do you
I,
think?
yeah. I don't see it either. I think Memphis is just going to kind of crush them. I've got Memphis as 37-point favorites.
Yeah.
I'm just not seeing Navy doing anything, right? Like maybe I'm wrong, but like I don't see it. I take Memphis here. And this is a Thursday night game. I'm gonna put something on Memphis in this one.
Okay. Um, Army at UTSA -9. I guess I don't want to go into too much in this because that's my deeper dive on UTSA. I guess 9 just strikes me at first glance as a little short, considering that they, big picture resume, UTSA won their conference 2 times last year, and they're going against a lesser independent, and they're at home. I'm thinking that all other things being equal, I would expect this number to be bigger. What do you think?
Yeah, I do have this bigger. My model, I have this about 14.6. So my model does
Mm,
like UTSA more. I think Army is also not particularly good this year. UTSA is they took down Texas State, so that's actually worth something. So I don't know. I'd probably lean UTSA here, but I'm not the biggest fan of this game.
yeah, it's a tough read. I'll say that. Liberty giving 3.5 at Buffalo. I'm probably missing something here. I'm not betting this only because I think I'm missing something. I love Liberty's quarterback matching up with the new coach Caldwell. Um, Buffalo lost for the second year in a row to an FCS team. Fordham without the offensive coordinator that left for Old Dominion. I what is this like a long to change in latitude play? I don't know why Liberty's only given 3.5. They just strike me as so much better. Am I missing something here?
No, I have my model is Liberty as 19-point favorites. So
Mm-hmm.
I will say that Liberty is just not getting a lot of respect by the betting markets right now. They are only 10.5-point favorites against New Mexico State. And it's weird because Liberty is well, not the most bet team, but there are people who go out there and bet Liberty. So I don't hate a Liberty play to be honest. I kind of like Liberty in this spot.
Yeah, me too. This might be one of those I wake up Saturday morning and find that I bet this game late on Friday night. I'll just keep it at that. FIU at Connecticut. I'm just going to line this up with that discussion we had in part one about the FIU quarterback and that really good debut. I mean, he had really solid numbers for his first ever start. Um, Connecticut's a good-ish team. I think Connecticut made a bowl last season. Did they not? I think they did.
I think they did too.
Um,
Yeah,
8.5 would seem kind of. I guess before the season, I would have had Connecticut by in double digits, like probably 2 touchdowns. And I don't know if this is just saying I was too optimistic on Connecticut, or maybe there's a little belief in FIU's quarterback might be something, and FIU's defense did make a step forward last season, and they've actually been good this season. Do you think that this is a matter of FIU improving, or just I was optimistic too much on Connecticut?
I mean my model does have UConn -24. I just it's a very I don't know if my model is properly adjusted for FIU playing at a better
Yeah.
level. The other thing is that I think the betting markets are giving North Texas a bit too. It feels like the betting markets are giving some of these teams a bit too much, and then some of these teams a bit too little because it's like, oh, you beat North Texas, but we think North Texas is actually okay. Versus like Liberty, like, oh, you beat New Mexico State, but we think New Mexico State is actually bad. I feel like there's maybe a bit too many priors baked into some of the games these teams have won or lost. So I I don't know. I mean, these could all be traps, but I kind of think once you start getting out of the Power Five games, these are not really traps. This is the like, and we see bad lines with the G5 games all the time, and these are all functionally G5
Hmm.
games, right? So
Yeah.
I kind of think these are just not particularly sharp lines. I could be wrong, but I kind of think these are all just kind of just like kind of duds, I guess. But
Yeah, I guess frame this another way. That's interesting. You brought up that your model has this as 24, and you say this out loud at first glance, and you would laugh and say no way. But I'm going to say this, and I think the answer is at the very least, possibly so. Can the new quarterback be worth at least 16 points versus Grayson James? I think so. You basically didn't score touchdowns with Grayson James, and this guy put the ball in the end zone. He threw for almost 300 yards in his first game. Maybe there is an alignment there, and your model is correct, and it just doesn't have enough of this kid in there yet. Possibly.
well, the thing is, it has him in there. It has his stats, but the problem is the team stats, like the team passing stats,
Yeah.
would be artificially lowered because of, right? So, but also UConn is not bad. Like my model actually kind of likes
Yeah.
UConn, but it also thinks their offense. It only got Florida International scoring 9 points, right? So it's a mix of both, right? So I'd probably not touch this one. This is kind of gets lost in the shuffle of early Sunday games, so I'm not really touching it. But yeah,
Maybe lost in the shuffle in your mind. If it's on TV, would actually have a grotesque interest in this one.
yes.
All right, last one. Georgia State giving only 7.5 at Charlotte again. Going to go to that theme again. Charlotte's defense is like sneakily improved, and Georgia State's offense is competent plus. Remember that they had the best returning quarterback, I thought, by some measures in the Sun Belt. This is showing even more respect for Charlotte's defense. Kind of like I said last week. Is that how you're seeing this one?
Yeah, I mean, it's. I have Georgia State as 11, but again, I have a lot of that bad Charlotte team baked into this too, so that probably gets
Huh.
you a lot closer to the 7.5. Um,
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just I kind of like Charlotte, but we're starting. People are they're like these. They're starting to catch like the books are catching up on Charlotte. It's weird. They're starting to realize that
Really
Charlotte team's not
quickly.
bad. So yeah.
Yeah. Maybe like when that coach had that whole outburst at the media day, maybe got everybody's attention, including the books.
Hmm.
Um, all right. Deeper dives. Mine is on the interesting Texas State UTSA game, and it was interesting to me for a couple of reasons. I actually, before the season, I was pretty bullish on Texas State, and I talked myself into taking their over. I think it was 4 wins for the season. And I kind of, when we were doing the American preview, I had some questions about UTSA, and there's just a couple of data points since that have really informed us. And it was interesting these two teams played, and even though UTSA won. It's pretty interesting, really kind of where these are going. And I guess it's worth noting, first of all, it was a 7 point game. The line was, I think, 13 and a half. So Texas State covered pretty easily. I think they covered pretty much the entire game, if I remember correctly. So when we were previewing UTSA and the American, I mentioned that I was concerned about the new offensive coordinator. So here's basically the apex for Frank Harris, their excellent, maybe formerly excellent question mark quarterback, um, under different offensive coordinators for the last 3 seasons. So you can see under Barry Lunny, who's now the offensive coordinator at Illinois, he had a 116. Will Stein is now the offensive coordinator at Oregon, 123. And then in a 3 games since, and this includes the bowl game last season against Troy, Frank Harris's apex is only at 28 now. I think he might be close to bumless territory. My goodness. Um, well, that includes the Troy game too. That's probably why he's not there yet, but he's close. I want to point out that this guy Justin Burke, he basically is two spots removed from, I think, the guy that did the really heavy lift in building this offense. Stein had never been an offensive coordinator. Justin Burke, I was concerned about him because he was a promoted special teams coach, which is concerning. I and he called the offense for the bowl game. That concerned me, and you can see the two games since their offense has been bad. It's the function of just how poor Frank Harris's numbers are. I heard somebody say, "Well, I think it's just roster turnover." No, this is. I'm pretty comfortable saying this new offensive coordinator. I don't know if the market is onto that yet, and that's kind of where I was a little circularly talking earlier about that Army game. I think UTSA's trajectory is definitely going down. I like the head coach, but I think he made a bad decision here, and I don't know if he'll fix it after this season. But in the meantime, if he doesn't get more involved, and that's one thing I should have looked up, is I don't know if his background is offense or defense. I think he's actually just more of a high school head coach, if I remember correctly. I think their offense could be in a really bad spot in there because there could be some opportunities to really fade UTSA, um, for a while here. On the other side, on the Texas State side, these are the numbers are of, you might remember TJ Finley. I didn't put his last name there. Oh no, I was so excited about his nickname. TJ Finley, nicknamed the Big Ponchatoula. That's his hometown in Louisiana. You can see his apex in his 2 seasons at LSU, and then he transferred to Auburn. 69 and 81. I think clearly being at Auburn under Brian Harsin was probably a horrible decision for the young man. Looks like he landed on his feet at Texas State in 2 games there. His apex is up to a 142. Reminder for those who don't know, Texas State new head coach, G.J. Kinney from Incarnate Word, another one of those guys. And it's not just him. He brought in, I think, 3 offensive linemen, if I remember correctly, that had like 80 career starts for him under Incarnate Word. When you've got that much, what would you call it? Like, what do they call it? Like historical knowledge or institutional knowledge that you're bringing with you. I think it makes for a very quick change. One of the receivers that he brought in from Incarnate Word was like a part-time starter, is like one of the top backups. So you really had a plug and play situation here that I think a lot of people didn't really. Some people didn't turn on to. What's interesting too is, I don't know if you remember when we did the Sun Belt, and I talked myself into taking this team over. Between the time I had actually done the preview and the time I got to Vegas, the total had gone up by a full game, from 3 to 4. So I think the informed money was kind of on this. But no coincidence that you see this jump in numbers. Finley was a pretty highly recruited guy coming out of high school too. So good to see him land on his feet. Good spot for him. Great offense. Great, clearly a good, solid head coach. I thought this was an interesting, almost, I don't want to say like a passing of the guard because these teams are in different conferences, but it was an interesting intersection of 2 teams that basically kind of see where their trajectories kind of cross, and one's seriously going up and one, I think, at least on offense, is really going down. That's my deeper dive. I can't think you're going to disagree with anything I said, would you? Other than I screwed up and not putting TJ Finley's last name in here.
No, I agree with everything you're saying. I think it is kind of fascinating. You're seeing 2 teams in Texas kind of going kind of opposite directions, or basically moving in opposite directions there. One kind of going down, one kind of going up. And I think it just goes to show the importance of coordinators and the fact that you have a good quarterback and a good coordinator, or a good quarterback can make a good coordinator, but like a bad coordinator can make a good quarterback look bad, right? And I think that's the thing. I think even looking at that UTSA Army game, right? Maybe. Like, this is the thing, right? It's like you have to be really careful with this, and this is something we should probably like. I really like the offensive apexes, and we should probably look at this going forward, trying to model this more in the off season. Like, what was their apex? What was like looking at apexes as coordinators rather than or batching them and seeing where they go. Like, we should look at that more for next season. I'm actually kind of intrigued by that. But yeah, I think it's a really it's kind of underlooked. I feel like the books understand this, but I think the bettors don't. I think that the books look at this, but the bettors don't look at it. And I think that's a very interesting way to look at it.
Yeah. I was thinking of maybe just cataloging these. It'd be a little unwieldy. I don't know, but I've just seen a lot of, and I've complained about this because this is my personal gripe podcast. A lot of these quote surprising developments, a lot of the times, are just like coaching changes that people just don't pay attention to. I'll say it one more time. Guess what? The guy who fixed Boise last season is nowhere around. He's probably on some lake in Utah, just enjoying his retired life again. And you can't just take for granted that a guy that was that that instrumental in turning the season around can just be replicated.
Mm-hmm.
We kind of specialize in like deeper dives, like we're doing here. That's not even a tough one, and I think that might be kind of like where folks like you and I can find an advantage over the market.
Yeah.
All right. Buck the Bookie. If you guys are interested, I've just kind of kept the ground rules in here. Take a screen grab and read those if you like. Robert, I think, knows the rules now.
Mm-hmm.
Here's an update for Robert. Don't know how confident you are in that Texas play.
I'm not
Ohio
worried.
State.
I'm not losing sleep. I'm not losing sleep.
Okay. In Ohio State, I've taken your action. So right now I'm 150 points ahead of you.
Currently, but it's on paper though.
Yep. But you got to do something.
Yeah. Let's see. Is this DraftKings
You don't have to.
Yeah. Okay. So DraftKings. So I'll give you the live tech. I'm not going to touch Texas this week. I'll give you the live DraftKings Texas. Texas over 10.5 minus 160, under 10.5 plus 130.
Oh my god.
So not a great on paper for
They moved a game.
my future bet. Huh?
Yeah. Well, you had
So
9.5 at DraftKings, so they moved it a number.
They moved it a whole game. I guess they were just thought they were going to lose that
game. They had. Yeah, I guess so. Jeez.
Well, they did not. So, I'm not the most worried about that though. I think they've still got Kansas. They've got Oklahoma. The eventual loss to Baylor. They have Kansas State, TCU, Iowa State could even sneak up on them potentially. Texas Tech as well. So there is a lot of potential pitfalls and traps that Sark can fall into. So I'm not losing sleep over this. That's fine. And you know what? Maybe they can cover. Maybe they can get to 10 wins. Maybe. I think that's still a slog for them. But even then, if I could bet the field in the Big 12 championship game, I probably would. Actually, do we have a live on that one? I'm not going to touch that one. Let's see. Big 12, Texas minus 130. So that only moved them 20 basis points. That's not a lot, considering the fact that they beat one of the supposed best teams in the SEC. So even the book's kind of like, yeah, okay. Maybe we were a little too high on them. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I want. Here's some ones I want. What are you going to give me for Penn State to win the Big Ten?
Wow. I can't give you more than plus 350. And I think you can get more than that elsewhere.
Yeah, I can. All right. What's Penn State to win the national championship game?
Oh, man. I can give you 1,200 on that.
Okay. I'm only getting 400 on DraftKings for Penn State to win the Big Ten. And then 18 to win the national.
Interesting.
Yeah, not as big as... Oh, wow, they're giving me plus money. Okay. Okay, how about this? Okay. Florida State to make the playoffs.
To make the playoff?
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh. I can't give you more than like plus 200 on that.
Plus 200 for Florida State to make the playoff?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll bet that with you. DraftKings is only giving me plus 115. Okay, 100 on Florida State to make the playoff.
Okay, now I'm going to go DraftKings. Let me run this by trading and see. Yeah, okay, I can give you 5 points of that. How many
Five
points
points.
did you want on that? You want what?
You're gonna
Did
limit
you say
the.
100?
I wanted 100 on that. Yeah,
Okay.
100 to 2 to 1.
Yep. All right. Screwed that
Okay.
up.
Yeah, and I'll do that, and then I'll do another. I'll do 50 on Penn State to win with DraftKings. Penn State is 4 to 1 to win the Big Ten. Give me 50 on that. 50 points, obviously,
With DraftKings.
with DraftKings. Yes.
Okay. So noted. I will update it next week.
Okay.
Anything more, sir? Is
No,
that
I
enough
think
for this week?
that's it for now.
All right. Man, I made a bad line there. Crap.
Yeah.
Um,
That may have cost you the game potentially.
yep. And these are teams that I like too.
Yeah.
I don't know. You're gonna have me rooting for some bad things here. I guess that the lesson is if you're a bookie, you can't really just root for teams. All
Mm-hmm.
right. Looking ahead to this week, a little update on the preseason upsets. Temple did not even come close to Rutgers. X in my column there. We don't have any of these called upsets coming for a while. Um, Interesting. A lot of upsets at Bama were called for. 3. I think we all saw that coming, although I didn't call for one of them. Week 2
If
plays. Oh, yes.
Oh, actually, go back for 1 second. I just want to make a note that some of these might not even be upsets by the time we get to them. Uh,
Yeah, I was thinking about that too.
Texas State might maybe be the favorite against Coastal Carolina. Uh, Let me think here. Tennessee and Bama could be. Oh no, they're at Bama right this year, so they'll probably would still be Bama favorite, but that could be very close to a pick. If Tennessee didn't look good this last week. I feel like you should if you call an upset and then by the time that game happens, it's not even an upset anymore. You definitely get bonus points for that. I think
That's a good point. Yeah. I like that.
so. Yeah,
Okay. Last week, we can go through this really quickly.
yeah,
My solo 1-0 for the week. You're 0-2. Really nothing impressive here. The dual plays sucked, although there are a couple of rough ones there, but we'll get past
quick,
it.
quick, quick note on that. Actually, I got Jackson State at 14.5 on
Oh,
on FanDuel, so that was actually a win for me. I actually did bet it at 13.5, but then it was 13.5 on Bet365, but then I saw that at the same time it was 14.5 on FanDuel, so I'm like, okay, screw that, we're gonna drop that bet and then bet it there, and it won. So yay.
so
JMU
let's
minus
call that a
7.
draw? I don't know.
Well, I mean, the thing is, it's funny because it says my plays are 0-6, and I actually made quite a bit on college football last week. So I mean, on paper I'm 0-6, but I actually and to be fair, we talk about a lot of other games oh, I would like to play this, think about this, right? So yeah, it's 0-6, but we've given out some good stuff. And then the thing is with Bama, it's Bama and Stanford ones are kind of funny because the model did this weird glitch out thing where it was Stanford, it was a USC minus 15. We're like, that's clearly a glitch, but it actually wasn't. Had they
Yeah,
actually
I
played the
forgot
full
about that.
game,
That's true. Yeah.
that's the thing, right? Because I was like, no, there's no way they're 52-point favorites, but actually they should have been. Um, and then same thing with Bama, because the model, once you got rid of Bryce Young and put in New Year data, the model suddenly hated Bama, and I'm like, no, there's no way. It was they were favorites against Texas a week ago, but then the model loved Texas, and then sure enough, Texas crushed them. So yeah, it's there's a lot of things 2 of those we went against the model, and then the model turned out we thought the model was glitching, and the model was right. So this is the problem early in the season where some of them are clear. When you can't tell where the glitches are, it's really hard to make plays, right? Because you can't tell if it's glitched out or if it's correct. And the thing was, it turns out a lot of the ones that we thought were glitches weren't actually glitches. So, yeah, I'd say
And to
UCF was
be and to
also
be clear,
UCF
this
and JMU were bad. Yeah,
yeah, this will go to its separate column when I have my own model, and basically it's the true your model and my model dual plays. That's the
yeah,
money shot there. All right. So this week's games. This was interesting. I loved LSU over Mississippi State, and your model does not. I'm really curious where that's coming from.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's not fully adjusted to the new Mississippi State. There is some old
Uh,
Mississippi State, and I think there's
Offense.
also some bad because the thing is, remember LSU. See, the thing is, there's end of season last year LSU in there, and LSU lost to Texas A&M, who just lost to Miami, and there's bad Miami in there too. So it's a weird kind of circle.
Uh,
That's so
yeah, that's a good. That explains that.
again, it's sometimes this model is once we get to full year data, like in 2 weeks when we're only at this year, this starts getting terrifying. But like, there's still some weird games that are weird anomalies that are moving this stuff. I would still take LSU here, but I'm not. I'm probably not going to bet this game. I kind of wanted to see what happens, but I still think LSU is definitely undervalued. It was sad because LSU was 40-1 to win the college football playoff, and I'm like, I'll sprinkle $10 on that, and the next day they're 45-1. I'm like, come on, like they didn't. How do they like? What is it even probability wise? Like what, a 10%? Like they weren't 10% less likely to win it the next day. Like who increased their odds of winning the college football playoff? Like that's ridiculous. Like, but LSU
Yeah,
like LSU hasn't like if LSU can put this together, like if we're right that Florida State is one of the best teams in the country, and LSU beat LSU got crushed by them, then if Florida State's one of the best teams, that doesn't matter that much, right? And that could like LSU, I think has a decent chance of not only just winning the SEC, but then obviously going to the college football playoff. But like they can still win the West. We're down on Alabama, and outside of Alabama, there's not much else we're worried about in the SEC
yeah,
outside of
yeah,
Georgia. And then if you can beat Georgia, yeah, right. So
yeah. Um, yeah. Your model kind of scared me to not take an LSU. I liked them. I want to point out that my numbers here are not my model. This is me basically taking the average of if I had to bet each side, taking the average of that and shading away from where my bias probably lies. So I'm not going to bet this because we're just if the model's on a different side, I'm just going to just find something else to bet. You and I discussed this one. We thought that there would be a big number that we could basically grab for Tennessee or for Florida, and it's at 7. And you know what's interesting? I was looking back; it was at 7 before the season started when I got the earlier
yeah,
lines from South Point. That's fascinating. That as horrible as Florida looked in Game 1, um, it hasn't moved a single point in like a month. It's nuts.
yeah. So I was able to grab some 7.5 quickly on. The thing is, I was like, okay, you know what? Because I expected this to open at like 9 or 10, and it was 7.5, and I think it was 7 in the other book, and I'm just like, you know what? I'm just gonna grab some 7.5 just in case this comes down somehow. And I grabbed it, and I feel very happy about that now. Um, the thing is, this screams. Then this is coming down. I think this is probably gonna like this is 7. I think it's even. I think I saw 6.5. Let me
Mm-hmm.
find it here. Uh, I could have sworn I saw 6.5 somewhere, but no. Yeah, 6.5 on Bet365 right now. This is 6.5, less than a touchdown. That absolutely to me screams trap. They want you to bet Tennessee. They're like, we'll take all your Tennessee money, please.
Yeah,
There is no way people are betting on Florida.
it's no. Like I thought when we were talking about grabbing a big line, I thought something like in the mid to high teens.
Yeah,
Um,
and the
Clearly, I
fact
mean,
that
if I'd have
it's
landed 17, but 7,
yeah,
yeah,
this screams to me kind of like that Auburn Cal game where it was like 6.5, and people were like, well, grab Auburn, but
yeah,
it's like no, like I the thing is it's weird because Florida did actually outgain um they outgained Utah. Obviously, they outgained
Utah.
Florida did outgain Utah. Yeah, they in terms of yards because remember in the second half, Florida's defense shut them down. I think they played McNeese
Yeah,
State. They crushed McNeese State. Tennessee actually had problems with Austin P this last week. Now I've
yeah,
basically because of weird things, I've gotten rid of all FBS versus FCS games
FCS.
because it
Yeah,
does weird things because. And this is kind of better because it lets for more accuracy between because like in FCS, the defenses are even worse, so their offenses are better. So this basically means that they're now just two completely
Mm,
separate entities so there's no more cross play because the thing is, say for example, a team like this was the issue when we first did this in the summer. A team like our Incarnate Word averages like 10 yards of play versus all their FCS teams. But if you start lumping it all together, okay, maybe they play an FBS team and get crushed, but then they're still averaging 10. So when you average it out, it's just like, oh, they're averaging like 9.7, even though they got crushed by the FBS team. They're still like 9.7. So then
yeah.
the model thinks it's still one of the best teams in the country, but they're not because, and this is the problem, right? There's no real way to peg that down. So I've completely removed that. So now there's no way to basically say, oh, Florida did this, but they shouldn't have, or they should have, right? So I kind of lean Florida here. I think the model, even at 11, I think if you had that FCS data from last week, I think the model would be even a bit lower on Tennessee.
Yeah, a couple of reactions there. It's almost like you have to treat FCS almost like it's Canadian football, where it's just different rules because there's such a more disparity between the offenses and defenses,
Mm-hmm.
and the numbers just don't translate. I in my after week one, I had that graphic about Florida's defense. It wasn't just the second half; it was really after the first drive they shut down Utah. They gave up one big play. That was literally it.
Yep.
And Joe Milton threw for, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it was less than 6 yards per attempt against Austin P. Pretty comfortable in saying that Florida's defense is better than Austin P, and they have better coaching as well. No offense to the folks at Austin P. So this is an
And
interesting one.
also, Florida only had two penalties against McNeese State, two for 20 yards. My assumption is those were two holding calls. That makes the most sense for yardage. And again, holding calls or whatever. They just call them for out of pity. Those could have been backup offensive linemen. Who knows, right? It's not. I'm not. The thing is, I was looking for like penalties for having the same jersey on the field. Penalties for false starts. Those didn't exist. So that's a
Yeah,
positive sign for Florida.
yeah, very fair. Okay, next game. I was delighted. Florida State at BC because I made this 37.5 before I even saw your model. And I see such a big gap between the number from my brain and the line, and I think maybe I'm just way off. And then your model just nails it with me. I love that. I've already I bet this once as soon as I saw the disparity. When I saw your number came in, I doubled up my bet on this one.
Yeah, this is the thing I love the most about my model because for a lot of other models, their lines are functionally the same in the NFL and even in college. Their models are the same, maybe a point off, and they're like, "Oh, I've got this game as a 3.5, and the book has it as a 3, so I see value." My model's like my model sees a 26-point spread and says that's not even close. It's like 26 is not even enough. It needs to be more than that, and that's what I love about my model. My model's like, no, they're really bad. Minus 26 points. Like that's what I
Yep.
love about my model.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not going to hurt anybody's feelings.
No,
Doesn't give a crap.
no.
This next one is really weird, and I don't know. I think Missouri stinks. They struggled against Middle. Maybe this is the market, and your model loves Brady Cook, and I just need to be convinced. I'm the guy who I had Kansas State going to the Big 12 championship. I think that they're going to be better this season than last season. I've had no reason. They crushed Troy, Sunbelt champs Troy, who didn't lose a whole bunch and was a legitimately good team last season. And they just made them look like an ant on the sidewalk. Maybe, I don't know, I kind of want to say maybe there's some SEC bias in here, but kind of, you know, words out, SEC's not that great this season. I can't figure this out. And then your model's even more so.
Yeah,
It's on the other
this
side
one
of this
surprised
number.
me. When I saw that line, I'm like, that's really low. But then I saw my model, I'm like, oh, okay, I'm not touching this. That's like that's one of the nice things about my model was like, you know what? Okay, maybe Kansas State does blow them out, but you know what? It's not worth it to touch this because you could get my model weirdly. I've learned that when my model weirdly agrees with a line with the book, it's don't touch that. Like if it's like within a point, like do not touch. Just ignore it, walk away. That's what I've learned with my model.
Yeah, I don't even remember. I'm going to check right now if I think I grabbed just one unit or one of these early season units. I bet like a literally like a tenth of what I usually bet until we hit the model here. Yeah, so I took this for one. I didn't double up on this, so not that I saw in your models on the other side of that. Yeah, your model's kind of along the same line, not on the opposite side, but your model thinks the line here is right on Northwestern at Duke. I think Duke is so much better. You, what does your brain say?
Yeah,
'Cause
it's. I think my model is just kind of low on Clemson, which it probably should be, but I don't know. I don't know why it has this so close. And it was even lower on Northwestern. Like, it randomly thought UTEP would beat Northwestern, and then they crushed UTEP. So I don't know. It's a
so
very
maybe it considers
weird.
that a good win.
Maybe it was higher on UTEP for some reason. I have no idea. So I'm very confused by this line, but I think this is enough for me just to not touch it. I will say though that it's funny because last year this line was Northwestern minus 7.5, and that was insane. And I don't know, maybe they're missing the same way this year, but I don't know. I think it's. I'm just. This is not touch. This is a no touch for me. This is like, okay, just leave this one alone.
Okay. Um, I think we've got part two of Florida State at Boston College. Good team visits miserable team, and the market just doesn't make sense to me. I just Kansas should be up by 5 scores at halftime. There's me. I just okay. Nevada, yeah, they had a kind of a okay, great. They had two kind of accidental touchdowns against USC, but man, Kansas is just so much better than them. It's not even a contest here.
My only concern here is that theoretically this is a look ahead game for Kansas because they have Texas next week. Maybe they take their foot off the gas a bit, but even then, I still think Kansas's backups, like throwing in Jason Bean here, he still beats them by a lot, anyways. So
Yeah.
I don't. And again, this could be very similar to the USC Stanford game where they just pummel them. They just put up like 40 something in the first half, and then this is just over. So
Mm-hmm.
I I don't see what Nevada does. Nevada is just not good. So
No, like I said in part one, they're probably a bottom five team nationally. Um, all right, this surprised me. Utah State at Air Force. Your model actually likes the Utes, or I'm sorry, I forget what the Utah State is. Doggone it. Utah State by 7.5. I don't see it, man. I think Utah State's in bad shape here. I've got Air Force by 3 scores, and
I
you're on
think
the other
this is a
side.
weird. I think this is a weird Sam Houston welcome to the model thing because
That's
it
just
does
gonna make the
it's
light bend for Air Force.
because it has two Sam Houston State games, right? And then it's like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
okay, they're really bad, but like the Air Force only barely beat them, so therefore Air Force is bad too. So I think it's not its fault if that makes sense. Um,
Yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah.
just a yeah. I don't necessarily want to touch this. I mean, Utah State did not look good against Iowa, but Air Force did struggle against Sam Houston State, but they could just have a really good defense, right? So I don't necessarily mind laying 9.5. I think Air Force will just get back to doing what Air Force does, which is just crushing people.
And I could be biased in that I'm really giving Air Force a lot of credit for facing what I think is a tough Sam Houston defense. And who knows? Maybe I'm ahead of the market. Maybe the market's ahead of me. We'll find out. Kind of like that, though. That'll be a good test to see who knows more, Buck or the market. This next one, I was delighted. New Mexico's actually giving one, and when I came up with my number, I did these all before I saw the market, and I was really distraught, like I was missing something. And then I'm basically lined up right with your model on here. Likes the
Yep.
Aggies too. Um,
Yeah, I have no
I
idea
don't
why
know. I don't even know what's in.
I don't even. My thinking is that people just think that both
Because
these
they
teams are
lost to
bad
UMass,
because
and
yeah,
there's a lot of bad
that
pre Moon God UMass.
that has to be it. I guess
And you know what
like they're
else? and then he got hurt right after that too. So you just had like this kind of they faced like the shooting star. They got the one game of the comet that flew into the universe and then flew
Yeah,
back
I
out,
just
and nobody
again,
gets
I just
it.
think yeah, a lot of these lines with you when you're dealing with non-Power 5 schools, and again, New Mexico State we actually kind of do like, but again, this is kind of bottom of the barrel. I like in terms of team recognition. I think when you get to teams that have no recognition, I think the lines just get shorter just because they want money on both sides, and I think um, I don't
Hmm.
know why.
Yeah.
I don't think
I
this
never
line
thought
should be
about
this way.
that.
I
That's
think
a
New Mexico
good
State's
point.
better.
Yeah. Yeah, that's an interesting point because I've always thought, I know maybe it's not. How do I say this? Maybe I actually do know these smaller ones better than the bookmaker to the point where he's not going to try to take an active position and he'll
Hmm.
just let like a market do it rather than take an active position. That's interesting. Whereas books can take active positions in the games where they know a little more something. They're more
Well,
familiar.
for some of them they have
Um,
to, right? But for like a game where you know there's not going to be a lot of betting done on it, and like
mhm.
their model might just be better for certain. Like they might have a really well developed model for like the Power Five, but then when you get to the G5 level, their model may not even
Yeah,
be as advanced as some of the stuff we have, right? So, which seems hard to believe, but it's
yeah, and
possible.
maybe
Maybe I
that's
don't know.
maybe it's a gap in that they're going to build their model to fit best to where they take the most volume. And
Hmm.
if we play in less volume where it's a less liquid or less perfect market, there's just something, there's an exploit there.
Hmm.
Just a thought.
Maybe. Well,
Um,
we're gonna have a huge
Kind
data
of
set
similarly. Oh,
from that this week, right? We're gonna have a huge data set because there's
yeah,
a bunch of games like that this week that we've picked up on, right? Like Navy, Memphis, this one, Air Force, Utah State. There's gonna be a lot of games, big sample size for us about which ones we like better, right? So let's see who's right.
and the next one, North Texas at Louisiana Tech. You know, it's almost been like kind of the theme of part one and part two this season. North Texas, they might just be really, really, really bad on defense. Louisiana Tech is not great on defense, but I thought I might be a little aggressive with minus 13. I was comfortable having a big margin to the market, and then your model comes here and it says, nope, it's a bigger margin than that. So I saw that and I doubled up on that one too.
See, I think this one's interesting, right? Because North Texas lost to Florida International, and I think people are like, well, LA Tech beat Florida International, but not by much. But I think people are just like, oh, but they're forgetting the fact that LA Tech
Yeah,
like
I forgot about
massively
that.
outgained them. That's the problem, right? Because the thing is, I think
Yeah,
this is where if you like line up spreads, this probably actually kind of makes sense. But if you look at the advanced metrics in terms of yardage, this doesn't make any sense at all. If that's where you get closer to 13 or 22 that we have.
yeah, that makes sense. It's a good point. So, all right. So I've got the dual model plays here, and I've got aside from the dual models, I'm going with Duke. I'm gonna give the 18. That's just too generous. And I'm gonna give the 9.5 with Air Force. I don't see that one being particularly close. So are you gonna make BYU a +8 an actual play?
Yeah, I'm gonna make that a play. I really like that. I'm gonna make that a play. See, I should just make like one play because my plays have been horrible so far this year. Um, yeah, I'll do that. So that means I'll actually get a chance to win money this week. So, because apparently just fade the
Okay.
plays that I say, but then I bet other plays and then I win those plays. So I'm just gonna keep my best play secret, I guess. We'll just go with the combined model for now.
Your secret plays. Okay. All right. Cool. So noted. Anything else for week 3?
No, this week is like it's so weird. It has like a handful of really good games, but like most of the games are like in the and night games, like from like one to something. There's nothing. So it's such a weird slate where it's like there's like okay, yeah, sure, we like Florida State versus Boston College, but are we really going to watch them to see if they win by 4 or 5 scores? Like, no, right? Like,
Yes, yes, yes. Of
well, okay, we
course,
can
yes.
watch.
But go
Well, I
on.
guess we can watch it a bit, but like some of these are just like there are so few games with like scores on like with spreads under 10. There's so few of them.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
At night, there's a couple of good
Um.
ones, but just so few through the day.
Yeah. The nightcap is Kansas at Nevada, so that I think that's a fun nightcap if you're on Kansas. Not if you're on
Colorado
Nevada.
State is 10 o'clock too.
Oh yeah.
That's a
Okay.
10.
Buy extra
It's a 10
beers.
o'clock game. Weirdly,
I will. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Good nightcaps. All right. My last thing for week 3 is Nebraska hosts Northern Illinois, and I'm just curious to
yes.
see if Nebraska's still going to hike the ball into that stupid back in motion rather than the quarterback because they only did that like 2 or 3 times last week against Colorado. Let's see if they get that fixed. That was awesome.
What do I have in that game? Uh,
I think the line's like 11. Or is it
yeah, it's 11.
17? Okay.
Uh, so many games. Here we go. I got Nebraska minus 34. That seems a bit excessive.
Oh boy.
That's with Jeff Sims. I mean, it's so weird because they lost to an FCS team. It's so and Boston College. The thing is, this is the model saying Boston College is just not good. It's like Boston College is bad. So therefore, beating
Yeah.
Boston
No
College
credit
means nothing.
for that win.
Yeah,
Yeah.
negative
Fair, fair.
credit. You didn't beat them by
Okay.
enough.
Yeah. All right. Very fair. Well, that is all for week 3. Robert, thank you very much. Good luck to
Yes.
everybody. And we will see you early next week.
See you guys.